So what are we going to learn today in the webinar or masterclass? We're going to start with the one thing that you need to do to prevent a heart attack and stroke, the biggest thing. Then we're going to talk about the 3 mistakes I commonly see when I'm working with individuals, and then what the plan is. What are those exact steps to prevent a heart attack by eating the foods you love? And if you stay to the end, I will offer a free gift to you. So it's incentive to keep watching till the end. So who am I? Well, I'm Veronica Rouse. I am a dietitian. I am the owner of a private practice called The Heart Dietitian. And I have a master's of applied nutrition and an undergrad in nutrition, as well as an undergrad in kinesiology. I've also been a certified diabetes educator for the last 15 years. More specifically, in the last 13 years, I've been really working with individuals trying to prevent and manage their heart disease. I started in diabetes, and then I have specialized now in heart disease. And from my experience, I can say that I successfully help individuals reduce their cholesterol, manage their blood pressure, reduce their inflammation, help control their blood sugars as well as their body weight through food. I also mentioned that I am a mom of 2 boys. My sons are, how old are they now? They're 5 and almost 3. A birthday party in May, so coming up. And they are very active little boys that I love dearly, but they keep me very busy. So that's what I do in my spare time, as well as I'm a big fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which I've been watching lately. It's a hockey team from Toronto that I have grown up enjoying watching. So it's almost playoffs. So a fun time for us. Okay, so enough about me. Let's imagine what your life could be like. And there's 3 scenarios here. So imagine waking up every day to start the day with energy. Just take a moment, close your eyes and think about that. You can think about, is that happening to me right now? When I wake up, how do I feel? How do I want to feel? And I know for me, I need energy. My boys are still not sleeping through the night. So when I wake up, I don't always have energy to start the day. But when I do, my day is a lot better, 1,000 times better, I'd say. So food can play a huge role in this. You can imagine the next scenario. Imagine not wasting any more time meal planning, also avoiding frustration throughout the day about, choosing foods. We eat so often and food can be on our mind throughout the whole day. So think about not having to think about food, how much space you have in your brain for other thoughts and um, other things that may be more pleasurable than thinking about what to eat at your next meal. And this can happen. And then finally, imagine with me being able to enjoy your visits with your loved ones without having to worry about your health, maybe about the sustainability of the longevity of your life, and being able to be healthy and run around, with your grandchildren, or be there to support your children and have fun with your friends, right? And these are all important things that food plays a big role in and can help you get to these fantastic stages of life. So getting into the masterclass agenda, the first thing I had said is we want to talk about the absolute one thing you need to do to be successful in preventing a heart attack and stroke. And very simply, it's eating more foods from plants. So plants are pictured here. So things like nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, even avocado, olive oil, all these things come from plants. And eating more foods from plants can provide more nutrients that can help us manage our heart disease. Plant foods are the main component of the Mediterranean diet pattern. I'm sure you've heard of this pattern before. It's been rated the #1 diet for years, actually. And when you look, it's in the shape of a pyramid. When you look at the bottom of the pyramid, the kind of the food that should be on your plate at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the bottom is plant foods. So lots of color there. That's your fruits and vegetables, but also these like whole grains, healthy fats, nuts, and seeds are also part of these plant foods. They have extensive research in the Mediterranean diet, but also there's lots of individual studies to say that these foods can be heart protective and can lower our cholesterol, our blood pressure, and reduce inflammation, which helps with heart disease. They can provide optimal nutrition because they're full of fiber. They naturally have no cholesterol, so you don't have to worry about that. They're low in a nutrient called saturated fat, which is a nutrient that if we eat too much of can increase our cholesterol levels. So we want to not eat too much of that. But again, when you focus on just eating more plant foods, you don't have to worry about the cholesterol or the saturated fat or even the sodium or sugar because plant foods are naturally low in that too. So instead of worrying about all these nutrients, just focusing on eating more plants or asking yourself, do you have plants on your plate when you have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner in front of you, can be a really good step to prevention of a heart attack. Plant foods keep you full longer, so it helps with weight management, and that's because they're full of fiber, and fiber takes a long time to digest in the stomach. So the stomach's constantly working to digest and sending signals to your brain to say, hey, you don't need to eat right now because I'm still working, I'm still full. And it is a sustainable way to stay on a new way of eating. So it's not a diet that is restrictive, right? We're suggesting adding more foods to your diet, adding more plants. So it's more of a positive spin instead of that restriction mentality, that diet mentality that we've had or been prescribed for many, many years that isn't successful, right? Because if there was a diet out there that was successful, everyone would be on it and we wouldn't have to be thinking about it anymore. I also want to mention that eating more plant foods doesn't mean that you have to go vegan. Okay. That's something else I get a lot of questions about. It's just a matter of adding more plant foods to what you're currently eating. We can still eat animal products, but it's important to add some of these beneficial plant foods for this, to strengthen our heart and our blood vessels and help our blood flow. So how can you start to eat more plant foods? Well, you can focus on snacks. I find this is the easiest way to start incorporating more plant foods because snacks, traditional snacks, I guess in North America are mainly like processed foods, and they're not necessarily whole plant foods. So if you can substitute some of these processed foods that you're currently eating and eating more foods from plants, this could be a great way to incorporate more heart healthy nutrients. So it could be fruit, it could be dried fruit. That's a really easy one. Have a handful of dried fruit. I always keep like a trail mix in my purse, and in my car. So whenever I'm out and about and I need a snack, that's something that's just like shelf stable and really nutrient dense. But you can also have fresh fruit, cut up vegetables are fantastic. Nuts and seeds are another great filling plant foods that will help you kind of bridge the gap from lunch
From
and
your in your
dinner,
foot?
breakfast and lunch.
Wow.
Is that a question? Sorry, I just heard
Huh.
someone. Okay. You're happy to I'd love to hear from you if you want to ask any questions. Just unmute yourself and interrupt me. No problem. Fresh fruit or fruit salads is another great snack. This is great to replace some of the sugary snacks. So if you're more of I don't know, if you like sugary snacks, then I would reach for the fruit for that satisfying sugar taste. If you're more of like a crunchy, salty snack person, then perhaps it's more the nuts, hummus, and guacamole as a dip with like corn chips. It's a really heart healthy way to add more plant foods, right? Even corn chips, they're made from corn. It's a plant. So it's just a matter of trying to find alternatives that you enjoy, that you like, that have these plant foods and these heart healthy nutrients. So that's the number one thing to do. Now there's three mistakes that I commonly see that I want to address and kind of talk about what to do instead, because they're really easy switches that I don't want you to be making. So the first one is cutting out foods and feeling deprived. Kind of been mentioning this, kind of sprinkling it through, but the way that I approach heart healthy eating is not through restriction. I find that cutting out food will make you feel deprived and make you constantly think about that food that you're cutting out. I don't know if you've ever tried this in any type of diet, um, but usually when we tell ourselves we can't have something, our brain wants it even more, and it makes it more difficult to cut it out. And in fact, it usually we end up binging on it later because we can't, tell our brain that we can't have something, because then that's all we want to do is have it. And when we do have the opportunity to eat it for whatever reason it may be, we often have too much because our brain says, hey, this is the only time you're ever going to be able to eat this. So make sure you eat a lot of it. And then we eat too much, we feel guilty after, and then we restrict again, and then the cycle continues. So it is something that has been uh, studied, and this kind of binge and restrict cycle exists. And in order to break it is to actually include foods that you're restricting in order to make sure that you don't binge on it, you don't overeat it. So including all foods, and especially foods that you enjoy, even though they may be bad or unhealthy, is extremely, extremely important to stick with a healthy plan long term. So that's exactly what we do together when we work together, is to understand how you can feel safe by eating these foods without overindulging. And then it will help create a safe and sustainable plan for the future. So it's a new way of eating, I like to say, instead of a short-term diet. It's a new, little tweaks here and there to get you to a heart healthy eating pattern that you can enjoy for the rest of your life, that you're going to want to eat for the rest of your life. Sometimes I have individuals who come see me, and they're often eating the similar foods because they only have a few safe foods they can eat. For example, like the chicken breast and salad is one of those common meals that are safe, that are deemed heart healthy. And eating chicken breast and salad night after night is not going to be rewarding or satisfying. It's not something you'll be able to stick to for the rest of your life. And so we can incorporate that meal, absolutely, but I want you to be able to enjoy it. So if it's not something you enjoy, it's not something you like, then let's find a different way to incorporate that chicken breast, or find a different way to eat your greens if it's not through a salad, right? So it's a personalized approach to help you eat the foods you like, but also eat these plant foods, these heart healthy foods. So instead of eliminating foods and, deeming them bad or off limits, it's all about moderation and balance. I know it's easier said than done. What does that look like? How do I do it? But it's a matter of stopping that messaging in your head first to say it's not a bad food. It's not off limits. I can enjoy it. And then working from there. Of course, there's many steps to that, but the first thing is to identify foods that you're labeling as bad or ones that are off limits, and then kind of flipping that script and making it a safe choice. It's okay. Another mistake I often see is relying on expensive supplements instead of choosing foods that will provide the nutrients. It doesn't work because there's not a lot of evidence to suggest that it works. When we look at the Heart Healthy Guidelines, the American Heart Association, Heart and Stroke Foundation, all of these guidelines that dictate how we as professionals teach and help people stay on a heart healthy diet, they actually say don't use supplements. So, for example, there's a diet called the DASH diet. I don't know if you're familiar, it's an acronym, DASH, and it's a diet specifically to address lowering blood pressure. Fantastic research behind it. Once individuals start eating this DASH diet, within 2 weeks, they can reduce their blood pressure more than medications on the market, which is amazing, right? So what they've done is they kind of isolated some nutrients that could be reducing this blood pressure. And so, for example, some are potassium, magnesium, and instead of providing individuals through food, like the nutrients through food, they tried the exact same amount of nutrients, but through supplements. And um, it didn't work. It didn't have the same effectiveness. It didn't lower the blood pressure the same. So it's not just the sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, it's not just the single nutrient, but they're thinking perhaps it's the whole food. Many other nutrients in there help with the absorption of the nutrients, as well as the added benefits of food and maybe the antioxidants, the phytochemicals that are there. And perhaps we haven't even identified all the antioxidants and phytochemicals that are in our foods, right? We've only been able to isolate a few and study them, but there's so much more research to be had there. So it's interesting that there's a lot of advertisements, a lot of push for specific supplements, but in the guidelines, they don't say that they're effective. When we research them, when we try them with individuals, we study these individuals and we look at their blood pressure, their cholesterol markers, it's not effective. So what should you do? Well, think about what you're currently taking. What supplements are you taking now? And think about why you're taking them. So who suggested them? You know, is it working? Maybe is there a blood test you could take to see if you need that supplement? Is there a food or foods that are rich in that nutrient that you're taking in the supplement instead? So again, something we can work with individually for sure, but just think about first step, right? Is what are you doing now? And think about why you're doing it. And if it was a, health practitioner that advised it, that's great. But also sometimes those supplements need to be updated, right? It's not something that's prescribed once and then you're on it for life. Sometimes you just need it for a short period of time. But just kind of take an inventory and see maybe we could save some money with the supplements and, spend it on food, right? Perhaps you could spend it towards buying a veggie tray, like a pre-chopped veggie tray every week instead of taking your supplements and that maybe aren't needed. And then that way, you're spending a little bit more money on the preparation and convenience of having vegetables there, but you're actually consuming them more. So it's a win-win, right? You're getting more of those heart healthy benefits that way. And then the last mistake I have here is avoiding eggs entirely. So this is something that was recommended years ago, but the research has since then been able to separate that it's not the dietary cholesterol in eggs or shellfish, really, that is increasing our blood cholesterol levels. It's more of a nutrient called saturated fat. So some of the prior research that made us think that eggs were a culprit of increasing our blood cholesterol levels, they didn't separate out what else was eaten with the eggs. So it's not necessarily the eggs, but maybe it was the bacon and the ham and the sausage that was eaten, because those are the foods that are higher in the nutrient saturated fat. And so you don't have to eliminate saturated fat completely, but we don't want to have too much saturated fat because that's going to increase our blood cholesterol levels. So instead, I want you, you can include eggs and it can be safe to consume, of course, in moderation, but they are a nutritional powerhouse, especially for breakfast. It's one of those breakfast foods that
I'm
people.
I put your machine out there. Oh, okay. I'm on a chat.
So it's one of those nutritional foods that I encourage for breakfast, because when we think of traditional North American breakfasts, it's mainly carbohydrate and like heavy carbohydrate dense foods. and we don't have enough protein at breakfast. So including eggs at breakfast could be a way to meet that protein need that is often lacking in North American breakfasts. They're also low in saturated fat, which is the nutrient that can increase our blood cholesterol levels if we have too much. They're a great source of other nutrients, like a great source of vitamin D, vitamin A, B12, B2, folate, and some antioxidants as well for eye health, which is pretty helpful. So that is my framework. Well, or sorry, those were my the one thing that I want you to do to prevent a heart attack, and the 3 mistakes that I commonly see. And now I wanted to talk about my framework that I, as the heart dietitian, use to help you prevent a heart attack without restricting the foods you eat. Right. So all these things can help, but there is a specific framework that I've found to be successful with my clients. And I've named them the 3 M's. So it starts with mastery, second one is mindfulness, and the third one is monitoring. So I'm going to go through them and show you how you can start to implement them. But mastery is that scientific, evidence-based, reliable research that can be helpful um, to provide context to what you should be eating. This is really the reason why I started my business, The Heart Dietitian, because I had countless individuals coming to me saying, Veronica, I read this online. Is it true? I've been doing this because I read it online. My hairdresser told me to do this, or my friend has found really good success doing this. So this is why I'm doing it. But all of those reasons aren't necessarily science-based, and that's what we need to rely on in order to make our decisions of what foods to include so that we can get to our goal the fastest, right? We want to lower our cholesterol or our blood pressure to prevent a heart attack and stroke. So how can we do that as quickly as possible? Well, let's do it with scientific evidence. So that's why I started the blog, is to provide articles about topics that I hear that perhaps aren't necessarily true. And I wanted to provide the real evidence that we have right now. So it's really important to separate fact from personal testimonials, and it has to have that science-based backing. This mastery part is really important in order to reduce confusion and frustration, and also to increase your confidence to order to eat those foods, right? If you're not confident that you're eating the right foods, then it's hard to continue, and just eating foods because maybe it is healthy for you has a lot different intention than eating foods because it will lower your blood pressure and cholesterol. So mastery is really important to understand the exact foods we need to eat, why, and so forth. So accurate information, really important to allow for that decision making regarding food. And then once you're confident, you don't have to question about what you're eating, and it's not always on your mind, right? That's the answer. And then you can let it go and focus on something else that may be more important than the food. You only implement successful strategies, so you're going to get to your goal faster. And it, encompasses what to eat, how much to eat, how often to eat, in order to prevent a heart attack and stroke. So what can you do in this mastery section? Well, in the Heart Health Academy is the program that I have. It's a 6-week program that, a group coaching program. We meet every week, and I have a lot of education for this mastery component. So lots of videos to watch about what foods to eat, why you should be eating them, how much you should be eating them, and when you should be eating, all based on science. And so you'll learn all of that evidence-based information. We have live calls each week, so you can ask your questions and get those correct answers, so that you can feel confident going forward in your meal plan. But in order, right now, I wanted to give you some kind of actionable piece to continue to prevent a heart attack or stroke using food. And this is one of the best things to consider, is something called the plate method. And I don't know if you've heard of this before, but it's looking at your lunch and dinner meal and actually splitting your plate so that you're having a balance of nutrients and foods. So half of your plate being that colorful food, fruits and vegetables, and then a quarter of your plate being protein, mainly plant-based proteins. There's some fish in there as well. Eggs is present, and even animal meats are there, right? It's all about moderation for everything. And then whole grains being the other quarter. This will ensure your plate is mainly plant foods. You're getting all the nutrients that you need to strengthen your heart in the right portions. Those are really a visual way that you can start assessing what you're eating. So think about what you ate for dinner last night, and was it the same proportions as this plates method? And if not, then how can you kind of make your plate different for tonight's dinner, right? Can you add a little bit more fruits and vegetables? Maybe it's an extra scoop. Maybe it's adding a fruit to it for dessert. Maybe it's reducing your whole grains. Maybe it's switching your grain from white rice to brown rice, right? Like little switches like that can make a big impact. So one of the individuals who was in my Heart Health Academy, her name's Kathy, and she's been working on lowering her cholesterol with food for 2 years. And she said she did have a little bit of success when the strategies that she implemented, but her doctor was still not happy with it and wanted to implement the statin medication to reduce her cholesterol levels. And Kathy was pretty frustrated with this because she's been working 2 years on lowering her cholesterol through food, and she's like was just about to give up. But we had a chat and we discussed what she was actually doing, and instead of sitting down and eating and consuming the foods to lower her cholesterol, she spent a lot of her time researching, right? She spent her time saving recipes, looking up recipes, scrolling Instagram, going on Pinterest and saving things, printing them out, making recipe books and meal plans, and going down that Google rabbit hole, questioning herself and not sure which foods she should implement. So she didn't do this because she had lots of time, but she did it because she didn't know what else to do, right? The information's there, so she wanted to find it. And because it took a lot of time to figure out what to eat, and then she wasn't confident of what to actually eat and what foods her family would enjoy, and the tweaks that, simple tweaks that could be effective for her. She was spending most of her time doing that research instead of actually eating and actually implementing it. So I think if she had spent the 2 years actually implementing those suggestions that instead of researching, she could have got to her goal a lot faster. And so when we were talking, she had lots of questions. She said, what happens if I can never eat red meat again or sugar again? My kids and my family aren't going to agree to this plan. And then also, she knows that she couldn't restrict sugar forever. She knew that she had birthday parties and celebrations coming up. So she had questions about, if I sign up with you, are you going to be putting me on this restrictive diet that I'm not going to be able to stick to and then I'm going to feel guilty about? So I was able to answer her questions and help her realize that all foods fit and we can eat all foods. I hope that message resonates with you. We can eat all foods. I think this is so important, right? It's just a matter of making that plan to know how much of these foods you can eat and then really focusing on the foods that are bringing down our cholesterol, our blood pressure, our blood sugar, our inflammation, so that we can be heart protective while eating some of these foods that we enjoy, right? Because food should be enjoyed and pleasurable, right? That's what I want for myself. So I want that for you too. Anyways, Kathy joined our Heart Health Academy, and after the 6 weeks, she could easily and confidently add these foods to her diet. Her family enjoyed it, and she didn't spend hours and hours meal planning and meal prepping and making these meals. We were able to help her find meals that could be easily executed and her family enjoyed. So that's the first M. The second M of my framework is mindfulness. So remember, in the Heart Health Academy, we do the 3 M's: mastery, mindfulness, and monitoring. So what's mindfulness? Well, mindfulness has been pretty trendy in the last few years. And when I'm talking about mindfulness, it's about being in the present but it's actually applying mindfulness to food is kind of the strategy I use here. So we want to be in the moment, but we want to be in the moment with the food. So we want to be able to enjoy the food and use all of our senses while we're eating. And also kind of look at the practices about how we're eating food, right? So sometimes it's not necessarily what we're eating, but how we're eating it. So think about that, right? A lot of people, there's a lot of information online and people can get that information and start implementing it, but not necessarily finding the results. And it could be because of how we are actually enjoying these foods. So we're focusing in this mindfulness, we focus on the present. We don't feel guilty or frustrated with past decisions. We just kind of let them go and kind of keep focusing on what to do going forward, a new plan of action, and that guilt and frustration cycle I talked about at the very beginning is eliminated in that aspect. This stems from intuitive eating. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's really interesting. I would encourage you to dive into it to learn more about this mindfulness piece, because intuitive eating, a great example, I guess, of this is children. So if you ever see children eating, they're extremely intuitive. They know how much to eat they know how much to eat to keep them full. They know what to eat to keep them happy. I know for my son, even last night, he loves chili. That's what we had. We had chili and he loves it. And he left half of it on his plate. And it's very unlike him to do, but he just said, I'm not hungry. And so he left half of his favorite meal on the plate. So when I speak with a lot of individuals, even I have the habit of cleaning my plate, right? Like just that habit of cleaning my plate, not necessarily knowing if I'm hungry or if I'm full or how that food's going to make me feel, right? It's something that we are born with, and children, you can see them practice it. But as years go on, we don't pay attention to it as often. So it's just a matter of bringing it out, learning about what to do, how to pay attention to it, so that we know how to eat food again in that intuitive mindfulness way to help us to feel good and prevent that heart attack or stroke. So as I said, it's recognizing, hunger, fullness, but also the thoughts that we have about food, even emotions that come up, think about why we're eating. Is it because of hunger? Is it because of memories, social pressures, lots of different reasons. I'm just going to say, I think someone's not on mute. Sorry, if you could mute yourself, just hear some dishes. Thank you. It helps to manage stress and reduce stress, which can help with inflammation as well. And it encourages healthier eating habits. Just mindfulness alone, so not even looking at what foods to eat, the research behind it shows that it can actually reduce your blood pressure. It helps to improve nutrient absorption when we're not stressed when we're eating, and reduce inflammation again. And it really does help us enjoy the food that we're eating, right? Bring pleasure back to our lives through food, something that we do all the time, but do we enjoy the foods that we're eating? Is it pleasurable? Is it helping us live a better life, right? So try it today. One of the first steps is just to slow down before the meal, during the meal, after the meal. So just pick one meal, maybe one that you enjoy by yourself. It doesn't have to be a family meal. So something that you can be doing this practice by yourself, having more time, and, chew a little bit more. Think about how the food is in your mouth, and what tastes, what smells, what sight, using all your senses to enjoy that meal, and kind of just, observe and see if there's anything you can learn from slowing down when eating. So another person from the Heart Health Academy, her name was Jackie. She had come to see me, or we spoke for one of our discovery calls together. And she had said that she's tried many diets in the past to lose weight, but not successful. She would lose weight at first and then stop the diet. She'd get off the wagon, as she said, and she would revert back to the way she was eating in the past. And she would gain the weight back that she lost, if not more. And that is very common. That, when you have a very restrictive, not sustainable diet, it's not something you can do for the rest of your life. You're going to end up not, stopping it. And then what are you going to do? Revert back to your old ways of eating because that's what you know, right? So she wanted to be healthier. She wanted more energy. She wanted to stop having Weight Watcher points rule her days and not have to think about food constantly. But she also wanted to lose weight because her doctor told her she needed to. So she was at the point where she didn't want to try another diet. And she had said that she wanted to try this intuitive eating approach, right? So she jumped into the Heart Health Academy, the 6-week program, and incorporated this mindfulness approach. And she quickly realized that it was a lot different than she expected it to be, right? When you're programmed with the diet mentality or trying different diets, it's all about what to eat, right? Meal plans and uh, foods to include, but it's also this how we eat is really important. That's what's going to be successful in the long term. And then finding out how we feel is how we make it more sustainable. So Jackie is a perfect example of how she was able to shift the way she thought about food, how to change the relationship with food. So she's not thinking about it all the time, not classifying foods as good or bad or even point systems. And she could just enjoy her life again. So it was also not just about food, but also about self-love, self-worth, self-trust, and changing those health behaviors, right? Not just focusing on what we eat. A lot of individuals who I see and work with who have been on diets, they know a lot about food and they know a lot about what to eat and why they should be eating it. But it's these health behaviors and the habits that we create that are going to make it sustainable and effective in the long term. So the last M of my 3M framework for the Heart Health Academy is monitoring. So monitoring is extremely important because after 6 weeks of the Heart Health Academy, I want to set you up for success to continue these strategies going forward, right? So how do you monitor your own success is important. And so that's what we teach. You need to continue to monitor. It doesn't have to be daily and it doesn't have to be every meal, but checking in and how to do that to make sure that you can look at your actions and your habits to ensure consistency and progress towards your goal. Because success is not linear. I think we all know that in life, that there's lots of ups and downs. And sometimes, you make progress and then you dip low and you say, oh, I should give up. But actually, those habits that you put in place can help you get back up and get me back on track and get you back to that goal that you're trying to reach. So monitoring can help you see that you're on the right trend and that you are making progress to your goal. Monitoring will help with developing these positive habits and behavior changes and these little tweaks you can do each day instead of throwing out what you've been doing in the past and starting a whole new approach. Not as successful as changing little things as we go. So yeah, life gets in the way, we get stuck. So what do you do during those life events? Well, there's lots of different strategies that we talk about in the Heart Health Academy to keep you on track, to reflect, implement new changes. Journals, apps, regular check-ins can be helpful. And then that self-awareness piece is also important. So what can you do now? Well, you could start with just jotting down a food diary. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but I usually get individuals to write down what they eat before they come see me. And just that act alone, a lot of individuals have this great reflection moment of, oh, I should be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing this. Or when I do this, it makes me, when I wait too long in between meals, it makes me crave sugar. Some kind of observations that you can find on your own through a basic food diary. So I'd encourage you to just write out what you eat for the day and see if there's any observations you have and that you can make. And that's a form of monitoring. It's not something I ask everyone to do every day for the rest of their life. No, no, no. I wouldn't do it either. but it's just one way that you can monitor what you're doing now. And then another successful client I had in the Heart Health Academy, Jane, she was so ready to change her diet after her doctor told her she needed to lose weight. She was extremely motivated, and the doctor gave her 6 months. Then they'd follow up, have another lab test, and they would assess to see if she needed medication. So she wanted to lose weight, but she wanted to keep it off in the long term. So she didn't want to, lose weight and then revert back to the way she was eating, because in the past that's made her gain weight in the past, kind of like the last client that we talked about. So what she had said is, I want to eat healthy, but I don't want to give up my pizza and my pasta. So I showed her how feeling good and losing weight is about simple changes and things that work for her and her family, because everyone wants to enjoy pizza night. You can have pizza and lower your cholesterol and blood pressure, I promise. So it doesn't mean you have to change everything about your day. It's these small tweaks and doable shifts that we work together to determine. Lots of brainstorming happening and trying to figure out what will work for you and your family. It's okay to say, no, Veronica, that's not going to work. And we can try something else, because that's, it's your life and you're the person who knows what is going to work and what's going to be successful. So to recap, we talked about a lot. We did the one thing that we need to prevent a heart attack, and that's to eat more plants. The 3 mistakes we talked about and what to do instead, and then the plan. Those 3M framework, the mastery, the mindfulness, and the monitoring. That's what we practice in the Heart Health Academy 6-week program that has been shown that it's great success to prevent. Watch it again. That makes sense. Okay, let me just end the recording.